In our time, one often hears the claim that people are becoming less intelligent. But is that really true? To answer this question, we must first agree on what we mean by intelligence. What is an intellectually developed person? And how can we measure intelligence at all? IQ tests? They're useful, but far from perfect. Intelligence, after all, is not a single number. It's a spectrum of reasoning, curiosity, creativity, and the ability to connect ideas across time and context. As Albert Einstein once said, the true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. And imagination can't be captured by any standardized test. This video won't give all the answers, but asking the question is already important, because without the question, there can be no search for an answer. Perhaps we can define an intellectual as follows: a person who can build the longest and most consistent chains of reasoning in their field and reach meaningful conclusions from them. In other words, an intellectual is someone capable of going the farthest in logical reasoning, whether in science, art, philosophy, or any form of human inquiry. Their thinking produces something, a result, a theory, a new understanding of the world. That, perhaps, is what makes an intellectual. But does everyone have to be equally knowledgeable in many fields? Not necessarily. Modern society values specialization more than broad erudition. The complexity of our world forces people to focus deeply on narrower fields. An engineer doesn't need to know ancient philosophy, just as a philosopher doesn't have to design a bridge. This doesn't mean one is less educated than the other. It simply means that the nature of our era demands dedication to a particular domain. As the American writer Robert Heinlein once noted, specialization is for insects, and yet, in our technological age, specialization is also what keeps civilization functioning. It's a paradox of progress. The more we advance, the more we divide knowledge into smaller, sharper pieces. But could it be that our intellectual level is truly declining? Technological progress may play a double-edged role here. On one hand, it grants us comfort, speed, and convenience, freeing us from countless daily struggles. But on the other hand, it also frees us from the need to think deeply. Machines now do the calculating, algorithms make the choices, and artificial intelligence even writes the words. As the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And yet, what happens when machines start giving us both the how and the why? Technology can silence the mind's natural hunger to solve, to wonder, to question. When problems are solved for us, our intellectual muscles atrophy, like a body that stops moving. The question then becomes, what kind of intellectual humanity do we actually want? What level of intelligence do we wish to see on this planet? Do we want a civilization where machines do all the thinking, or one where humans continue to challenge themselves, to explore, to understand? Maybe intelligence is not about efficiency, but about meaning. Not about solving faster, but about asking deeper. Carl Sagan once said, "We live in a society exquisitely dependent on science and technology, in which hardly anyone knows anything about science and technology." That warning still echoes today. We hold more information than any generation before us, and yet understanding seems harder to find. The internet connects billions, but it also fragments our attention. Knowledge is everywhere, but wisdom remains rare. Maybe the true measure of intelligence is not how much we know, but how deeply we can think about what we know. Socrates taught that the unexamined life is not worth living. That is as true today as it was in ancient Athens. Because to examine our lives, our ideas, our beliefs, our actions, is the essence of intelligence. So are we becoming less intelligent, or are we simply evolving into a new form of intelligence, one that is more dependent on tools, less on memory, but still capable of creation and reflection? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain: if we stop asking the question, the answer will no longer matter. In the end, intelligence is not just about logic, memory, or specialization. It's about awareness. Awareness of self, of others, of the world we shape. Maybe the future of intelligence lies not in outsmarting machines, but in rediscovering what makes us human: our curiosity, our empathy, our imagination. As philosopher Alan Watts once wrote, "The meaning of life is just to be alive." It is so plain and so obvious and so simple, and yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. Perhaps that is the highest form of intelligence: to see clearly, to understand deeply, and to live wisely.